Kearns.
Thank you, Lascia and Corla. And first of all, I'd like to congratulate you, Minister, on your appointment. Third time lucky, I hope. I welcome this motion that allows us to reverse a poor decision that was made without consultation in the fishing sector. Ireland is required to enact some form of a penalty point system. I don't think anyone disputes that. However, the government's approach has resulted in a process that lacks common sense and puts a further burden on small fishing communities and families. In late August, the Taoiseach, then acting Minister for the Marine, signed this new system into law. The Irish South and West Fisheries Organisation and other representative organisations were dismayed at this development because there was no consultation with the industry. Many of them found out via an official email a few days later. The government's scheme flies in the face of due process. There are very limited rights to appeal decisions. Decision can be made on the balance of probabilities, and even if an appeal is successful, the penalty points would still remain on a licence. This is poor lawmaking that erodes confidence in systems that are supposed to be about ensuring better practices. The people of West Cork were further confused by the fact that a Fianna Fáil Taoiseach, who had previously condemned this statutory instrument, was the one who signed it into law. While Fianna Fáil will point out that the minor differences between the regulations are there, these are largely technical, concerning extension of time periods and alterations to oral hearings. However, the core issues remain. After the announcement, commitments were made by the Taoiseach and the new Minister for the Marine to meet with representatives for the sector, which, needless to say, looks and feels like tokenism. There is little point in meeting to discuss concerns after signing this into law. Where was the proactive engagement? Our coastal and island communities deserve better. Fishermen and women should be central to creating a viable and fair process. This point system is another example of the disconnect between the department and the sector. The government's tie-up scheme was deeply unpopular too, as it did not address their needs. It was clear from when the scheme was announced that it was not fit for purpose. Representatives of fishing communities contacted me highlighting that it wasn't sufficient in covering their costs. Fishing is an expensive livelihood in terms of overheads, from maintenance costs to insurance and safety. Their concerns were reflected in reports that very few took up this scheme. The only way successful and progressive policies can be developed is in a genuine partnership with communities and businesses affected. I'm particularly concerned for smaller fishing groups who, despite practising the most sustainable fishing, are often overlooked. At a time when we're all making changes to the way we do business, I would have hoped the department would be open to more proactive measures to help an industry that is vital to so many coastal and island communities. Another issue is concerns around lack of accountability in the Sea Fisheries Protection Authority. The organisation which will administer the point system, we are waiting for a review of that body, and until this is released, it seems ill-judged to give them additional powers. Again, we acknowledge the need for a point system. Not only is it necessary under EU regulations, but it is an important tool to prevent illegal, unreported and unregulated fishing. These practices put the livelihoods of honest fishermen and women at risk, and this needs to be tackled. But there are fairer and better ways than this. We need a system that makes sense, that is fair and transparent. That is the type of system coastal and island communities can buy into and have faith in. And this motion gives us a chance to hit the reset button. This discussion also allows us to focus time on the fishing sector, which is too often relegated around other industries under the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine. We need to support sustainable, small-scale fishing, and to do that we need to immediately address the lack of basic infrastructure for them. Too many small piers dotted around our coastline and islands are falling into disrepair and lack basic amenities like slipways. They urgently need investment to preserve the livelihoods of local fishing families and the practice of truly sustainable fishing. The kind of fishing that has existed in rural and coastal Ireland for generations, that is more environmentally friendly and that will keep families living on islands and in other coastal and rural areas. Funding for these piers comes in limited form from the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine and the Department of Housing and Local Government and Heritage to local authorities. Having been a member of the Coastal Management Committee on Cork County Council, I can tell you how apparent underinvestment in piers was. At the very first meeting, I had to point out that everybody fighting for the same minuscule amount of funding was counterproductive, and we should instead make the focus, how can we get much more needed funding for piers? I've called for small piers to be made a priority for funding streams for marine infrastructure to support sustainable fishing communities. The fishing sector has been severely impacted by the pandemic. Since March, fishing communities have been calling for greater support due to the significant drop in markets. I've sought a fisheries task force to help the sector and communities through measures such as tailored social protection mechanisms, consumer campaigns, and I'm making that call again today. This motion highlights serious issues with the penalty point system and allows us to correct a mistake, and I urge all deputies, especially those who represent coastal and island communities, to please support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy.